Apuma music. It usually creeps in without much fanfare. You can't quite pinpoint when it took root. Just that, at some point between your early years and the present, you absorbed the idea that tranquility had to be worked for. That warmth came with strings attached. That affection served as a prize for acting right, rather than a birthright simply for existing. Perhaps it stemmed from the stern glance your dad shot when you stepped out of line, or the heavy quiet your mom imposed after you let her down. The guidelines escaped you, but the fallout stuck. Each instance where your actions stirred their displeasure, a scowl, a heavy breath, a turned back, sent a weight plummeting in your core. You swore to yourself it wouldn't happen twice. That's the origin of people-pleasing. It's a dialect we pick up before language fully forms, not born of benevolence or open-heartedness, but of sheer necessity. Music. When your security, your place in the world, and your value hinge on keeping others content, you mature, convinced that balance falls squarely on your shoulders. You see it as your role to mend the atmosphere, to bridge the gaps of quiet, to smooth over the rough spots, regardless of the reality. And that's the poignant reality. People-pleasing often emerges as a kid's tactic to hold on to care. Folks commonly view pleasers as simply kind-hearted, excessively giving, perhaps overly sensitive. Yet that's merely the surface. At heart, those who please others live in fear. Fear that a refusal will shatter bonds of love. Fear that letting someone down spells isolation. Thus, they twist into forms that barely resemble their true selves. They grin through frustration. They nod along despite weariness. They express regret for faults that aren't theirs. With each concession, they drift farther from their essence. You may not notice, but your body's wiring holds on to those initial teachings. Every reprimand that urged silence, every clash that branded feelings as hazardous, every implicit directive to remain mild, steady, and yielding. Those weren't isolated events. They formed the framework. The mind builds connections through patterns. In youth, it links security to actions that dodge penalty or exclusion. So if compliance meant muting yourself, that's the path you took. If helpfulness required sidelining your own desires for others, that's the identity you forged. Gradually, your core identity mirrors the demands of those around you. That's the essence of people-pleasing. Not a defect, but an adaptive strategy past its prime. Yet, here's the catch. As an adult, that strategy keeps humming along. Despite no longer being that vulnerable youngster, your physiology hasn't caught up. It still responds as if retribution looms for any discord. It surges with unease at the thought of letting someone down. Consequently, you persist in the act, grinning, consenting, performing, because buried within, you cling to the notion that your well-being rests on it. Consider how frequently you utter, quote, erotit, while intending quote, would pequan. How routinely you concur to sidestep friction. How you endlessly mull over others' potential judgments, rerunning dialogues mentally, hunting for slip-ups in your words. That's not frailty. That's ingrained response. For countless individuals, it traces back to parents who were emotionally absent. Caregivers erratic, unreliable, or aloof in their feelings. One day affectionate, the next remote. One instant beaming with pride, the next laced with letdown. Thus, you train yourself to track their tempers like a sentinel, detecting emotional tempests on the horizon. You mold your conduct to their responses. You dissect each inflection, each exhale, each shift in countenance, as that's the key to enduring in that home. Bit by bit, you transform into another version. One more subdued, more amenable, one who avoids ripples. It unfolds without awareness. You merely grasp that your sentiments burden others, that your wants overwhelm, that your limits drive folks distant. So you suppress them. You offer a smile in exchange. You mend the brakes. You crack light-hearted remarks. You step into the role of harmonizer, the beloved figure who spares everyone discomfort. But internally, fatigue sets in, for you can't suspend your breathing indefinitely without the ache emerging. The most poignant aspect is how many pleasers confuse their depletion for compassion. They claim, I simply feel deeply, or I avoid disputes, yet underneath lurks dread that halting the outpour will leave you alone. Experts term it fawning, a reaction to stress akin to fighting, fleeing, or freezing. Confronted with danger or rebuke, rather than resisting or escaping, you placate. You voice what soothes the air. You strive to uplift others, to evade that sense of peril. It's not a desire to undermine your own truth. It's that your system lacks alternatives. And gradually, this pattern seeps into all facets: your career, your partnerships, even your close ties. You emerge as the dependable sort, the go-to confidant, the one those who mend everyone else's problems but neglect their own. You believe that if you're kind enough, serene enough, flexible enough, others will eventually recognize your value. Yet, they begin to take it for granted. What started as generosity turns into an obligation. You fade into the background, concealed by your very courtesy. But here's the key insight many overlook. Catering to others doesn't truly win their affection. It merely makes them at ease. And ease is fleeting, while true affection is unwavering. By constantly adapting to fit everyone's expectations, you deprive them of the opportunity to care for the real you. After all, how can they value you if you never reveal yourself? That's why so many who prioritize others end up feeling isolated amid crowds. They pour out endlessly, yearning for reciprocity someday. But affection derived from submission isn't genuine. It's manipulation masquerading as warmth. So how do you break free? It begins by dismantling the lessons from your early years. That's challenging. It requires facing the harsh reality that your parents might not have perfectly defined love. Their idea of virtue could have been mere silence. Their notion of honor might have equated to submission. Understand, caregivers rarely intend harm. Often, they operated with the limited tools they had. Yet, unintended wounds still leave scars. You can offer forgiveness while validating the impact on you. Denying its significance is what sustains the cycle of accommodation. Each instance you suppress your voice for another's comfort, you reenact the narrative from your past. You reinforce the lie. My desires are irrelevant. My reality isn't accepted. My serenity isn't mine to claim. Imagine crafting a new narrative instead. What if you ceased excusing your authentic existence? In truth, declining requests isn't harsh. Establishing limits isn't self-centered. Letting others down isn't defeat. It's sincerity. It's evolution. It's reclaiming your genuine self. The unspoken truth is this: you don't gain affection through accommodation. You attract it by embracing authenticity. The harder you pursue validation, the further it slips away. But when you drop the act, allowing your imperfections, boundaries, and essence to surface, that's when meaningful bonds form. Naturally, this prospect is daunting. If your identity has long revolved around pleasing others, authenticity seems risky, like stepping into turmoil unarmed. You'll be tempted to revert to familiar patterns, to atone for simply being you. Yet, bravery isn't fearlessness, it's persisting despite it. With each refusal that you weather unscathed, your inner wiring registers security. With each honest revelation that others embrace, you debunk your doubts. You reshape your understanding of affection. Gradually, you grasp that affection isn't a prize to capture. It's a structure built on candor, mutual regard, and clear lines. Your role isn't to ensure universal contentment, it's to achieve your own completeness. True recovery doesn't commence by rejecting others. It ignites by affirming yourself. Yes to respite, yes to candor, yes to flaws, yes to your inner calm. When you cease repairing everyone else's feelings, you create room to process your own. There, you rediscover your core, beyond the facades, beyond the yielding, beyond the facade of perpetual okayness. You reconnect with the you that predated anxiety, the one unburdened by performance, the one that just existed. That essence merits guidance now. Yet, consider this empowering fact. Habitual accommodation doesn't signal you're flawed. It shows you astutely navigated survival through self-effacement. You cultivated compassion amid turmoil, gentleness amid clamor. You honed emotional awareness by decoding others to protect yourself. That perceptiveness isn't a liability. It's your greatest asset. The aim isn't to extinguish your compassion. It's to liberate it from apprehension. Authentic generosity doesn't demand sacrificing your well-being for harmony. It involves presenting your complete self, even if it unsettles some. It means offering from a place of security and love, not dread of its loss. This transformation alters your world. You discern genuine ties from mere tolerance. You sense the subtle power in firm limits. You understand that refusal isn't dismissal, it's guidance. It redirects you toward what truly counts. Recovering from constant accommodation resembles imparting a fresh dialect to your being, one where security stems from candor, not endorsement. It's clumsy initially. You'll falter, you'll justify excessively, you'll grapple with remorse over minor assertions. Persist, though. Each uneasy denial fortifies the base for a truer affirmation. For the core inquiry isn't how to win their favor. And me? It's about whether I can accept myself even if they can't. Once you reach that point of saying yes, you're truly liberated. The next section picks up right there, exploring how early life patterns influence grown-up connections and offering ways to escape the trap of relying on others emotionally while rediscovering who you are. The toughest challenge in recovering from constant approval seeking isn't drawing lines in the sand. It's confronting the quiet that settles in afterward. After all, if you've devoted your whole existence to fitting what everyone else requires, the instant you pause, folks take notice. They distance themselves. They probe. Some lash out, and it stings since you believed affection flowed both ways. You imagined it was without strings, yet it hinged on your willingness to go along. That's when many approval seekers slip back into old ways. The shame hits like a tidal wave. The anxiety creeps in again. You begin wondering, am I really just looking out for number one? But no, you're simply refusing to fuel a setup that thrived by erasing your true self. You're not flawed for craving recognition. You're just accustomed to fading into the background. That's precisely why the initial phase of recovery involves mourning. Mourning the care you never fully got. Mourning the early years when tranquility had to be worked for. Mourning the bonds that endured only because you shouldered the load. To quit seeking approval everywhere, you must confront a harsh truth. You were conditioned to view your own desires as a hassle. That mindset doesn't fade in a flash. It sticks around in subtle ways. Like saying sorry for nothing at all. Like minimizing your successes to avoid ruffling feathers. Like elaborating endlessly when a simple refusal would do. These patterns seem innocent, but they're signs of a profound misconception about affection and value. You absorb the idea that warmth is purchased through perfect conduct, that security is gained by staying out of the way. So you turned into an expert at adjusting, a chameleon molding to fit any demand. Yet constant shifting makes you lose sight of your original shape. No wonder approval seekers feel adrift with basic queries like, what would you prefer or what do you require? For so long, responses centered on the person right there, not you. You mastered reading others' feelings while ignoring your own. And that's not on you. Growing up, your folks were your whole universe. You relied on them for basics: meals, home, warmth, protection. So if affection seemed patchy or tied to conditions, your mind didn't blame them. It turned inward. Kids don't conclude that their guardians lack emotional availability. Instead, they decide, I guess I'm not worthy enough, and thus launches a lifetime quest to demonstrate your value. You aim to excel as a learner, a companion, a mate. You figure that nailing it all will keep abandonment at bay. But what you're actually patching is an ancient hurt, the one murmuring, Bright's quote 9. That hurt forms the core of how you see yourself. You link calm to managing everything. You grow extra sensitive to others' vibes since uncertainty once spelled threat. You detect friction before words form. You intervene to ease it without prompting. You label it compassion, but at heart, it's watchfulness. It's your inner alarm signaling, keep them content and I'll be secure. Yet, security rooted in holding back isn't real. It's forsaking yourself. That's why approval seekers often buzz with worry amid calm. The body rejects ease because serenity seems alien. Your mind scans for hints of dismissal, criticism, or the coming relational tempest, since turmoil, however tough, echoes familiarity. It's an odd contradiction. You yearn for genuine connection, yet dread it. True bonds demand truthfulness. They call for limits. They need you to appear wholly authentic. But that's been drilled into you as risky. So even if someone offers love for your essence, you retreat on reflex, terrified that full exposure will drive them off. Thus, you continue the act. You persist in accommodating. You maintain the facade. Gradually, your ties begin to ring empty, not from lack of interest on their end, but because you're absent from them, present only as the persona they anticipate. That's the stealthy toll of endless pleasing. You sever links not merely with people, but with your core. Without that link, existence dulls. You could be amid crowds, yet feel profoundly overlooked. Folks might commend your patience, your generosity, your niceness, but inside, you sense invisibility, silence, emptiness. How could they cherish the authentic you if it's never permitted to surface? So how do you shift something so ingrained? Begin by distinguishing generosity from yielding. Generosity stems from free will. Yielding arises from dread. When you, acting out of compassion, fills you up, it leaves you feeling open, stable, and serene. Yet when you respond from a place of anxiety, worry about letting others down or being misread, it saps your energy. You walk away from the exchange feeling diminished. That's when it's crucial to halt and reflect. Is this coming from my genuine desire or from dread of the alternative? That simple inquiry can transform your world. It reveals the spots where you've surrendered your authority, not through affection, but through terror of forfeiting it. Once you spot that habit, you can start reshaping it. Overcoming the urge to always appease doesn't involve turning distant or self-centered. It involves fostering equilibrium. It involves acknowledging that your feelings count just as much, that your well-being, your schedule, your tranquility all merit the identical regard you extend to everyone else. It's possible to feel profound empathy while upholding limits. You can remain generous and still decline. You can cherish others without bearing the burden of their joy. But the challenging aspect comes early on. When you initially establish those limits, it won't seem liberating. It'll feel off, like you're violating some unspoken code. That's because your system links boundaries to exclusion. But that's merely the outdated narrative we've been stuck in. Persist with the practice regardless. Each refusal you voice instructs your being that candor doesn't shatter bonds, it shapes them. You'll observe that certain ties weaken. That's fine. They rested on expectations your evolving self can no longer uphold. Yet the connections that endure your sincerity? Those are the keepers, rooted in genuineness rather than pretense. Gradually, a lovely shift emerges. Tranquility no longer rings hollow. Quietude no longer seems threatening. You cease seeking forgiveness for simply being. You quit craving universal approval. Instead, you begin appreciating your own company. And that's the turning point. See, the compulsion to please was never truly about them. It stemmed from that vulnerable part of you yearning for security. So the true effort isn't persuading others to accept you anew. It's discovering how to nurture yourself with the care you once craved. That entails mending your own wounds. It means stepping into the role of the guardian your younger self deserved, one who affirms that affection isn't something to be earned. You are inherently worthy of it. Begin modestly. When guilt arises after turning someone down, recall that this unease signals progress. When a person reacts poorly to your limits, know their response doesn't determine your value. When you notice yourself justifying excessively, interrupt, inhale deeply. You aren't obligated to defend your presence to the world. That's the gradual path to reclaiming your existence, one honest instant at a time. And eventually, you'll grasp this. True calm isn't achieved by satisfying all around you. It's discovered in embracing your authenticity, even if it stirs ripples. You didn't enter this world to be perpetually compliant. You arrived to be complete. Your upbringing may have instilled the habit of suppressing emotions to dodge disputes. They might have convinced you that obedient kids stay quiet, that restraint equals power, that yielding yourself is devotion. But you're grown now. You have the freedom to opt for another way. You can prioritize candor over consensus, reality over validation, affection over apprehension. For when you quit molding yourself to their expectations, you at last emerge as your true self. And in that unfolding, wonders occur. The fitting souls begin to appear. Those who value your authenticity, not your ease. Those who don't demand you diminish to suit them. Those equipped to embrace your honesty, your layers, your safeguards. That's the essence of genuine connection. It's resilient. It thrives without facades. It flourishes amid shared esteem. Yet to welcome it, you must allow the childhood notion of love to fade, the one drilled into you young. You must relinquish the craving for everyone's favor. You must embrace that not all will comprehend your evolution. Some may label you aloof. Others might deem you unfeeling. But in reality, you're at last integrating fully, since authentic ties can't sprout from forsaking yourself. You must appear as you are, even if it carries hazard. And through that journey, a deep insight dawns. The serenity you chased externally was nestled within you forever. You simply had to cease undermining your own truth to uncover it. So next time that old impulse hits, to mend all, to gratify all, to polish every jagged corner, halt, breathe, inquire. What does my authenticity require in this moment? Because that subtle inner voice, long smothered by years of yielding, represents your liberation. No more muting it, no more excusing it. Just heed it, and perhaps for the first time, trust it. Since your value was never gauged by the harmony you preserved for others, it's calibrated by the depth of truth you harbor inside. So quit chasing flawlessness. Stop trying it won't be straightforward. Begin embracing your true self. You're worthy of connections that don't demand you put on a show. You're entitled to calm that doesn't rely on holding your tongue. You're allowed to take up space without dimming your light, since genuine love never insists you fade away. Instead, it calls you back to yourself, wholeheartedly, candidly, without a hint of regret. That's the point where you quit chasing approval and reclaim your authentic self. Music.